Thursday, the 25th of June. You see me looking over here because I've got a calendar. I just want to reinforce it. This is our Unity Forum for the week, and this is the time when we invite people from various parts of the NuPath firmament to join us to talk about what's going on in their lives, how they remain connected to NuPath. Today, we're going to be hearing from a number of, call them experts. And first up will be an important guest, Representative Rich Haggerty. I'll bring him on in a minute. But first, I wanted to just tell you a brief kind of the story of something, an experience that I had earlier this week. Greg and I were talking before about an hour ago, and I said the reason that I like to take times to sometimes share with you what's going on in my head is because this is all sort of this organic phase. I have these opportunities with you folks. Some of you are the people that are watching care enough to just stay connected on that level. Will maybe be able to see the kind of progression of my thinking and how that informs NuPath policy. But my mother was rushed to the emergency room Saturday morning for congestive heart failure. She's okay. We've had kind of a rough week, but it looks like she's going to be released within the next day or two. So that's really great news. But I had the experience of dealing with Leahy Hospital, which is now merged with Beth Israel. And the first day that I was able to visit her was Monday evening, because we were waiting for the results of a COVID test that she had taken when she was admitted. She was negative. So then we were told that we'd go in, and I had some things I wanted to bring into her. I arrived at the front desk just shortly, like 5 minutes after 6, and I'd been told, and on the website it said that the visiting hours from 11 to 1 and 5 to 7. So I showed up, and they informed me that the visiting hours had changed that morning, and now it was from 11 to 6. Meaning that I was 5 minutes late in this particular situation. So it was frustrating for sure, and I asked that could they make an exception in this case? I had seen my mother. I wanted to come up. How was I to know that visiting hours had changed? And and in the course of they called up to the nurse's station, and somebody on that end said no, it was outside of the policy, and that unfortunately I couldn't come. And the person that reported the news to me seemed to be very, just very kind of flip and unconcerned, let's just say, with me as a human being in the world. And I felt very powerless at that moment. And I asked a few questions of another person that was at the desk, and without warning, this the security guard that was there that had been involved barked at me and said that I needed to leave the premises immediately, or that he was going to escort me from the premises. Now, in my life, I don't know that I've ever been threatened in such a way that I've found myself, certainly not in many positions. I was joking that maybe in my much younger days, if I was at a bar and it was last call, I might have been, it might have been some stern acknowledgement that I needed to leave the premises. But in general society, I have never before been in a situation where I have felt the stern rebuke from a person in authority, and for asking questions, just maybe being an inconvenience, I suppose. But I certainly was not swearing. I had raised my voice. I wasn't causing any kind of disruption to the environment, and I was so struck by the feelings that I had at that moment when I received this, "Sir, you need to leave." I felt embarrassed. Like I felt like maybe everybody was looking at me like maybe are they thinking that I'd done something wrong, that I was in a violation of some policy. What made it so much worse is that I felt that I was in the right in this situation, that I had done no wrong to warrant any kind of such a stern rebuke. And anyway, to make a quick end to the story is I did contact the Leahy sort of customer satisfaction department, and I've since had several lengthy conversations with the powers that be, and I've documented this situation because I was wondering what would have happened if I'd been of a different state of mind, where I had not retreated immediately, if I had sort of said, who are you to tell me to leave, and what are you talking about? I mean, it was just so it was so offensive to be spoken to that way, and it just made me realize how many people in our world and in our country and marginalized groups of people that are met with this this very sharp edge of the law, whether that be in police departments or in, as I experienced, a security guard that maybe was a bit, over ambitious in his life's calling, and how that really affects the soul of somebody in that situation. I've joked before that it's almost as though the universe is requiring me to experience things, and I'm not, comparing what I went through with anything in particular, but through the course of the past 5 or 6 years with my I've had hip replacements that allowed me to understand, uh, what it's like to be a person with a physical disability and around access issues. I've had personal loss. I lost my father. I've been dealing with an aging, parent, my mother, and in each one of these situations, it 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 helps me to remember and remind me what so many people, whether that be our staff, clients, people from all walks of life that I may come into contact with, that I have a much deeper sense of appreciation for and empathy for what it's like to be somebody that feels marginalized, that feels disconnected, that feels, more, cast to the side of things. And this is somebody who, I acknowledge having significant levels of authority in my position and enjoying many benefits that some people do not have. And yet, um, some of these experiences have really kind of informed my desire to lead an organization that treats people fairly, that understands the needs that people have, that will always try to approach situations and things that families are feeling and the powerlessness that maybe some folks will feel from time to time. And I just wanted to say it again that whatever the case may be, I want to be part of an organization that treats everyone fairly. And I want to be part of an organization where people listen to the concerns and that we truly seek an understanding of what's going on. Life is hard. Life is hard, and we're dealing with hard things on a regular basis. And we've chosen a career that requires advocacy on a constant basis, and that we're always fighting for equitable treatment for the people that we represent. And and I just wanted to share that story because I don't know the full breadth and depth of what some people have gone through in different areas, but I certainly have had increased sensitivity recently, and I'm going to seek always to remember that and to stay like focused on the things that really matter. So there, I was afraid if I didn't mention it that I'd forget to talk to you about it before the following week, and I felt it was important to me because it's occupied a lot of my headspace. So I'm going to ask Greg to bring our excellent, most revered representative, Rich Haggerty, on to join me. We're going to speak with Rich first, and I know he's got an extremely busy schedule. It looks like he's in his office, and he's got an important call at 3:30. Representative Haggerty, so good to see you.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, and is everybody good with you, your family, your wonderful, beautiful wife, and all the rest?
Everybody's doing good. Everybody's doing good. And I was sorry to hear about your mom just then. And I'm glad to hear that it sounds like she's on the mend. And I'm thinking of you. I know that, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As a reminder, you are the great grandson of James D. Haggerty, who founded the Woburn Daily Times in 1901. So your family's been a pretty, familiar part of the community for many, many years. A
Yeah.
grandson of Edward Costello, who was the firefighter in Medford. I got this from your bio. I knew some of it before, but you became a state representative elected to the House of Representatives in 2019, and you're going to be your term is 2 years. Is that right? So
That's correct.
you will be up for election this November. You'll be looking again. And now you are on a number of prestigious committees. I'm going to read these from my notes, but the House Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change, the Joint Committee on Education, the Joint Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, and the Joint Committee on Financial Services, which we know is big. You have sponsored and co-sponsored so many bills in the short time that you've been there. Nobody can say that you haven't been rocking it since you hit the ground running. So much around the recent COVID pandemic. You were asked to talk to us, and you shared your knowledge with us early on in this pandemic, when we were before the first sort of relief package was passed. But since then, I was looking through the review of the various bills that you've had involvement with. Stuff around, election, protecting election ballots and voting. You had a major bill that was around protecting care putting caretakers onto a registry for people with disabilities. You have been a friend of ours in so many ways, and it seems like you're having like an amazing first term. Would you say that's true? You've been very busy.
Well, as a politician, I wouldn't want to disagree with anything that you've said.
Yeah.
But no, I've enjoyed my time, Dan, and I enjoy my relationship with you and all my friends at NuPath and the amazing work you guys do day in, day out. And I'm a lucky guy. Every day I get to get up and do something I love and serve the community that my family's been a part of for more than a century, and I get to represent the great community in Reading as well. And I'm a lucky guy, and during these times, as you kind of indicated earlier in your opening remarks, you take a look around and value your family and things that are close to you, and realizing that everybody doesn't have it quite as easy as perhaps some of us, and particularly during these times. And every day I'm appreciative of the opportunity I've had to serve and the work I've been able to do. So.
Representative Haggerty, we have been in the human services industry. We have been, as alarmed and as concerned as many industries in Massachusetts and nationally. Obviously, we employ a relatively large number of Massachusetts, citizens. We are responsible for their health insurance, so we feel. And never mind the fact, and I should have led with it, that we're providing a service to the most vulnerable citizens of the Commonwealth. We've been thus far been so grateful for the various, federal and state, the decisions that have been made on the state level, federal and state level, that have allowed us to continue to operate, to maintain the safety net, providing services for people with disabilities. And I would say that NuPath, when I think about the trajectory around over this pandemic since it first began in March, I feel very proud of the work that our employees have done, the innovation that's been sparked, and the fact that we really we were able to contain within our realm of influence, really contain the virus. We had very few cases. We no deaths within our own organization. We did lose a few people that were in our day programs but hadn't been part of our residential facility, and we're, to the best of my knowledge, we're operating in a way that is really reflects a strong respect for the guidance that we're receiving from the governor, wearing face masks, maintaining distance, washing our hands, and so forth. And now we're in the process of talking about reopening the day programs, and there's a lot of consternation about what is the FY 21 budget going to look like for the Department of Developmental Services. And we're getting, a lot of kind of silence. We don't, and not, necessarily in the negative way, but people just don't know what it's going to look like. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the tax collection is going to look like, the tax receipts are going to be for Massachusetts, because of the delayed filing date into July. I think there's a lot the state doesn't know. But can you take us down a path of what's going on, what's in the heads of our legislators as far as what is this budget going to look like? How bad might it be? What are your feelings on? And I know you don't have, like, you can't like do solid predictions, but tell us, just as your friends, like what you think we should be thinking about, and how bad could this be?
So, I think that you succinctly said that there's definitely some budgetary challenges. The Commonwealth is facing a $6 to $7 billion budget hole. We think it's going to approach 10 to $7 billion. Last year our budget was around $44.5 billion. So in rough numbers, you could be talking in the neighborhood of a 15% loss of revenue. And as you know, and as I think anybody who runs a budget knows, or maybe runs a household budget, or there are certain elements of your budget that is considered discretionary, and there's certain items that are not discretionary. You got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay your car payment, but maybe you don't buy as many groceries, or you don't go out to dinner as much. Well, discretionary items are a smaller portion of the state's budget, and when we look at the money that we have to outlay, that we're required to outlay, that's a big chunk of that $44.5 billion number that I just mentioned. So when you start talking about taking $5 to $7 billion off of that number, there is going to be some pain in a lot of industries. And I think what it's our responsibility to do is understand, and prioritize the areas of the budget that we view as absolutely necessary. And there's no doubt that supporting the most vulnerable populations in our communities, in our Commonwealth, are a big part of that. And they have to be a big part of that. So whether or not we get on the path of having conversations about new revenue, whether we get on the path of conversations about getting creative with regards to borrowing, all of those things are going to be on the table. We just passed the 1/12 budget to get us through the month of July, because our budget runs July 1 to June 30th. What we're trying to figure out is really what those numbers are really going to look like. When we say conceptually that we think it could reach $7 billion, well, our hope is that within the next 30 days, we're going to have better data to give us, to allow us to make a more informed decision. We don't want.
Can I just quickly interrupt? You
Yeah.
just mentioned you passed the 1/12 budget. For people out there that maybe are not as familiar with sort of the wheelings and dealings of the state, what you're basically saying is that you passed a budget that will fund the economy of the state with 1/12 of what the annual budget was last year, right? So essentially, it's like we don't know exactly what's going to be like for the next 12 months, but we're going to let you go from July 1st into the month of July, and we're going to fund all of our various programs and our responsibilities at last year's levels. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct. How often is it likely that may be? Will you pass a 1/12 budget then for August if you're not there yet? For September, or are you waiting for some sort of reports from what do things look like post the new filing deadline, or what do you think would be some of the key things that would qualify, changing this one way or another?
I think one of the big things is going to be how rapidly people are able to get back to work, and how rapidly the economy comes back. Because the economy and people spending money, from a consumer standpoint of view, but also the number of people going back to work. Right now, we're sitting around like 16% unemployment. If that number were to substantially decrease over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, you'd see additional revenue, of course, being taken in by the state from a payroll tax standpoint of view. Those types of items, of course, are going to supplement the budget and offer more dollars into the budget for our ability to be able to spend on all the areas we view as critical. So there's a number of items, but there's no doubt that the economy and how it's been impacted by this COVID-19 crisis is really creating a challenging situation for us. And our hope is that the unemployment rate will drop, that the economic engine of the Commonwealth will come back, and we'll be able to get back to some sense of normalcy. But whether that takes 2 weeks, whether that takes 2 months, I think is somewhat, it's a wait and see a little bit right now. That's why we're trying to delay making, some of these more difficult decisions, I think.
And my feeling has been that the Baker administration has done a pretty, thorough job of educating, sort of the Commonwealth around, their reasons for how they have elected to, bring back certain industry and win, and about, being very sort of transparent with the data, the dashboard, the different various indicators that they're using as a gauge, as a guide to reopening business. Because regardless of our concern about the lack of revenue that people are paying on taxes when they go out and they purchase or they're back to work, it will be way further setback if for some reason come October and November we have to shut down the state again completely because we've seen a resurgence in the COVID-19.
I think you're totally correct, and that's the And that's the balance here. And I understand as a small, my family's been a small business owner for a long time, and I know a lot of small businesses in our communities, and I get it from an economic standpoint of view. People are feeling the pain. Their stores aren't open. They're not able to do their jobs in many cases and provide for their families and all of that. And we recognize that. But I think to your point, the calculated decision that's been made over the course of the last several months, even up to now, is to make sure that we're making data-driven decisions. We're making decisions about whether to open the economy, how to open the economy, and we're basing those based on the data of the day. How many positive COVID testings we've had for the specific series of days in advance. What's that trend look like? How are our hospitals dealing with those types of things? And I think that you can say with confidence right now, when you look at the decisions we've made, and then you look at where we're at right now from a positive case standpoint of view, a number of deaths per day, all of those challenging statistics are actually, very positive. I mean, at the end of the day, we're seeing, including locally here at Winchester Hospital, the least number of COVID patients since this entire situation has started. They've shifted some of their floors from COVID floors over to respiratory floors, which all positive signs. And I think you look at the pure data, it shows that Massachusetts has led the way with regards to limiting the number of people being impacted by this terrible disease. And the more likely we are to limit people being contract this disease, then of course the faster we'll be able to open the economy ultimately, and most importantly, the less chance we're going to have of a resurgence or some type of second wave, which is obviously a major concern and would set us back even farther.
And so well put, thank you. The whole idea of, if you follow this guidance, then we believe that we'll be able to keep be able to keep the lid on this pandemic until we can find a vaccine that's relatively available. And so as we are constructing these reopening plans for our industry, what I keep continuing to remind myself is if we're doing the social distancing, if our people and our staff and people are wearing masks, if we're maintaining the cleanliness of our environments, if we're washing our hands furiously, if we're doing all these things, then we can return to some business and commerce without the threat of this continuing to spread. But it's very specifically related to managing it within the context of these special and heightened sort of levels of care and oversight. I hear what's happening in so many states right now, Texas being one of them, with more than 5,000 documented cases just yesterday in the state, the highest number yet. I think I remember hearing.
Florida's not far behind.
And I do not. That's not a state I want to find myself in right now. I want to know that what we've dealt with for the past 3 or 4 months has not been for naught, but that it's brought us to a point where we can begin to return to some sort of a normal rhythm and not worry about risking people's lives, putting people's lives at risk. I know we're up against a hard stop for you. I know you've got a call at 3:30, and I could talk to you for the rest of the afternoon if given the chance. Should we be worried? Should I be worried, or can you sing me a lullaby and put me to sleep tonight? I mean, can you go through this?
I think that there's a lot of positive signs right now with regards to the direction I think the Commonwealth's going, and I think we've taken a lot of the right steps to make sure that we're providing the care and the guidance that communities and businesses and organizations need to make sure that our economy opens in a way that ensures that we don't have a second wave. And that's what our goal is. That's the objective. And as we head down this path over the course of the next several weeks, as we head towards phase 3, perhaps as soon as July 6th, and then ultimately phase 4, perhaps the end of July, then we'll be able to be more comfortable, I think, in being able to open things up and get out and have an economy that starts to ramp back up again, get people back on the job, get people's businesses going again, get human service providers fully operational. Getting childcare up is a big part of opening up our economy. So there's a lot of components to this, but I think as we head through the next month, we're going to get there. And I think that right now, when you look at where we are versus where we were 30 or 60 days ago, I think I can say with confidence that you should be able to sleep tonight very soundly, Dan.
no lullaby. Um, Representative Richard Hagerty, you have been a terrific guest. You know, you are a great friend of NuPath and to our industry, and to me personally. You're also my state representative. Now that I've moved to Woburn, and I value that so much. I value our relationship, and you know, you are one of only 3 people that have been now called back as the second time back onto this forum. So it's like Saturday Night Live, you know, like what guest is going to be have the most appearances? But would
Yeah,
you come back and talk to us again at some future point if we asked you to?
absolutely, absolutely. I'll be the new past version of Alec Baldwin on Saturday Night Live, you know?
That's right. You'll be the Alec Baldwin. Well, you've got 2 people in tow for that right now. But thank you so much, and we'll let you go and get back to your business down on in the Capitol building. But thank you
Thank
for
you,
everything
Dan, and
you do.
thank you to all your staff for all the good work you guys are doing. And as always, I'm here to help, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
You're doing awesome. I'll vote for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye. All right. If you don't know your state representative, get to know him or her because it's great. They're people, just regular people, and it's just good. They appreciate knowing who their constituents are. They appreciate being educated to the issues. I mean, for the most part, I think most of our state representatives and senators want to be doing the job because they want to make things better for people. And Representative Richard Hagerty is just a great force. I think he'll be president someday. So that's what I joke around with him about. All right, guys. Now we're going to move on to Mr. Matt Johnson. Matt Johnson is the director of the entire clinical services for NuPath. He began working for us in August 3rd, 1998. Matt Johnson, 22 years
Yeah.
you have been with NuPath.
Yes. Yep. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Every moment. Well, that I know is a pile of caca. You know that. Not every moment. I know there's been tough moments. I remember you. My first real memory of you is when we proceeded to drive down to Higashi to do the observations prior to Meredith Road, individuals moving into that program site. And it was all this, you know, the whole autism sort of, you know, arena. It was just starting to manifest onto the stage, wasn't it? You know, what do we know about people with autism? Very little at that point. Yeah, and you have been so involved in so many ways. This is the part where you have to just look interested and not be too embarrassed as I say like lots of nice things about you. So, but you have been so involved in our Walk the Walk campaign, raising over $9,000. It's incredible since 2015. You are a Club 50 legacy member, meaning that you've been part of the Club 50, the most effective and the greatest fundraisers for every year that we've been doing it. In 2018, you were number 8, so that's getting under that sweet like 10 spot. That is like really, really pushing the envelope. And in 2019, number 16, which anything under 25 is, anything under 50 is great, but raising close to $3,000. It might be a little bit of a push to say that you are the father of our autism programs, but were so much a part in those early days of kind of articulating our philosophy on autism. You remember like those days when we were like, "What's our philosophy on autism?" And there wasn't, there really wasn't a philosophy, and ours became this kind of amalgam of the very best practices of what we had seen from the Wasagashi School and others that we started to work with, but your influence in those early days and then going onward as we just changed so much over the past few years as far as how we managed these. There was a period of time where you were the sole sort of person responding to all of our incident reports. Remember those? Yes. dark days. You poor thing, like had to be the one that would be the sole entree before there was any kind of clinical department, and have always been somebody that has just carried the organizational sort of goals and strategic endeavors in your mind, first and foremost. And one final thing, there's millions, probably more I can say about you, but you have got a rare and very special kind of approach to your job, and you're not a typical clinician that or like or a consultant that's going to come in and say, this is how we got to do it. We got to have it this way. We got to do this. You get like the complexities that are contained within running, large divisions and large programs, and understanding that you could write the best clinical program in the world, award-winning maybe, if there is, awards given to behavior programs. And it could be a useless endeavor if you haven't kept in mind the environment, the staff that are going to be implementing it, the training requirements. And that is just something that I feel that has brought us to such a high point for NuPath. So all that to say, thank you for your quiet and so important, such important work that you've been doing. Yeah, it's been a long time, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the praise. I appreciate it.
So there wasn't really a question in there. It was just a lot of like me talking. But as we think about this, is what I would invite you to talk about. Thinking about what our day services division, and frankly, what is NuPath going to look like in this new era as we begin to think about reopening and post-pandemic. I think we've agreed that in some cases the pandemic has given us a chance to, just sort of to exacerbate certain areas where there may have been challenges before, or some to illuminate, the better strategy going forward in the future. And I wonder if you talk just a little bit about how you see, some of the changing, expectations, rhythms. Are we going to see more of a need for clinical services? Is it going to be a different kind of clinical services as we open? I know that you've got, a couple of people in your department, and I just wonder if you talk to us a little bit about what's in your head right now as we think about reopening and where we go from here.
Yeah, I can definitely share some thoughts on that. I guess I would start by saying I really want to praise NuPath. I feel like I am part of a company that just really stepped up, and I see it across all of the divisions, from residential to nursing to the clinical team to the day services team. It's really been amazing to see how people have stepped into new roles. They've taken on new tasks. They've done it without complaining, just really just jumping in and making it happen, from the virtual programming to helping with the COVID supports to jumping in at the care center. It's really been an amazing process to see that happen, and to be part of that. I feel like I'm part of a team here that, can really accomplish anything. When I think about the clinical team and I think about the clinical work that we do, we've obviously seen some dramatic changes in the past couple months. We've gone from where we're directly with the individuals in the programs, providing those supports, doing observations, to really figuring out how do we do it virtually? What can we do on a virtual level to really continue some of those tasks? We as a clinical team took on a variety of different tasks, from taking people to get COVID tested to supporting them during the COVID testing, really hands-on right there with them. Also shopping for the care center, providing different things that we weren't really doing before. But in terms of the clinical work, we really had to shift some of that to the virtual level, going house to house and being in the programs, being essentially visitors at the houses wasn't something we could do very frequently. And we've taken on those roles of doing virtual programming, doing virtual observations, and really looking at ways we can utilize some of that technology. And one of those has really been the more recent kind of, way we've really kind of, I guess I would say, realize the full potential of the Navigating Life app in terms of the clinical features that it can provide for us. The data collection and the way that we are getting it electronically from the homes is fabulous. The management teams and the staff are doing a wonderful job with it, and it's really allowed us to not only reduce paper, but to realize how we can access that data right away and how useful a tool that is, that feature in the app. And we plan soon to be able to provide clinical information through the app as well, whether that's a treatment plan or just some best practices for people. Those are really great things that have kind of changed the way I look at the clinical services we provide. Those will inform the way we look at clinical services in the future as well. I don't think any of us sees an immediate return to life pre-COVID. So we don't see these large day program settings that we had before. They're not going to immediately appear back anytime soon. When we see the way that we do day services or clinical services or our residential services, they're going to shift and change. And some of that will be virtual, and some of it will be really looking at how we take our clinical resources and use those within the programs as they exist. Whether it's a smaller day program setting, how do we identify those clinical services and how they're going to be provided in that setting? And then in terms of residential, how much stays virtual and how much do we begin to go back into the homes and provide hands-on supports? It certainly is going to change. And I think when we talk about the behaviors of the people we're working with, we have seen a shift. There has been a shift in terms of, the numbers, the degree by which we see challenging behaviors. Some of that comes from the plain and simple fact that people are in their homes. They've spent a lot of time in their homes, and they're kind of isolated. They're in those settings. They're in that place where they feel comfortable as well. That setting that is it's their home, just like my home or your home. We arrange our homes in ways that are comfortable for us. We have our bedrooms, our familiar environments, our familiar sensory environments. And those are really places where we're going to have, reduced anxiety, reduced challenging behaviors, reduced demands. And we certainly see that. We've seen that as COVID has hit us, that we've seen a reduction in some of the challenging issues that we face and the people we support in our homes. But on the other hand, it's not to be missed that we have people that are struggling, people that have struggled through the COVID crisis in terms of being disconnected from their families, really challenged to what it's like to be isolated and to just have those few housemates and staff and the people you interact with and be starving that kind of social interaction. People that have missed work opportunities. They're frustrated. They aren't making money. They aren't out there with their peers or with their friends and family. And, they're not able to get that kind of routine and structure they had before in their lives. So there are people that are struggling, but there's also some reduction in those challenging rates just because people are home. Whether that's sustainable over the long term, probably not. We probably see people, even if they stayed home, even if we said there isn't a day program option right now, we're still going to say, let's get out in the community. Let's get engaged. Let's find meaningful activities for you to participate in, things that are going to be, rewarding for people. And those come with challenges. Once you step out.
Sorry. Yeah. I wonder if some of what you're talking about could be applied to some of our staff, to ourselves. Many of us have been used to, some of us have worked remotely, for a period of time. We've adapted. We've learned how to accomplish the basic, sort of, the task analyses of our job, if you will. And so now as we begun to talk about coming back, there's been, I wouldn't exactly say behavioral issues, but we've had some people kind of push back with saying, no, I don't need to, I can do everything I need to do from home. And so it's what you're talking about. It's just it's just a point of transition again, right? I mean, it's helping to support people as they return to, a routine that brings them outside of their home, because that's probably for the best in some ways, that people are not, led to, just sort of languish in their home environments, right?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you can only stay home for so long, and you need to be out there with your family and with your community. And we look at the individuals we support in Without Walls, and I'm sure they're all missing those social connections they have in the community. And now they're home and they're disconnected from that. It's important, and it brings challenges. It brings challenges to get up, get out of your house, do that commute into work, get into the building, have those job responsibilities the way you did before. People are working, but it's a lot easier when you can do it in a more casual, comfortable environment of your own.
Yeah. Right. So we're going to be working together collectively, and you will bring the clinical department along and your leadership of it. And the people that work for you in trying to figure out how to place, best place our resources in this, return to the new world order, post-pandemic or whatever that's going to look like. But also thinking about, the opportunity this may provide, because you kind of alluded to it earlier, but when we think about how we can better, harness, the reach of technology, put navigating life into full and greater use, can you imagine a future where we still have, as strong or a similar kind of clinical presence, but maybe provided in slightly different ways if we're using virtual virtual arenas to help monitor people, whether that be our support of people in settings. So let's imagine more of a virtual reality job coach, or somebody that's on speed dial, a job coach, or they could call this number if they're having a meltdown, or that maybe our setup and our thinking about our clinical environments, how they may be changing, as we reopen, or go into the next the near future, how we're dealing with things or addressing the needs.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like we will see the clinical systems change in the way that we do things. Some of that will be streamlined in the way that we're able to present information, provide training, gather data collection. These things will streamline and make us more efficient and more virtual. Certainly I see a way that a clinician would be able to be available through a FaceTime opportunity for someone that's struggling and not have to be physically present at that moment in time. Certainly training, when we talk about training, there's going to be a lot of, creative ways that we're provide training to staff. Sometimes we have to provide training in a manner that is physical. So we do some of those physical trainings with staff, and we'll figure out how to make that work in a virtual way and how to make that happen. And that will make us more efficient and more effective.
Well, Matt Johnson, I could talk to you for another hour. I just keep an eye on the time. I probably need to let you go too. And I thank you. Seems too trivial a remark to say to somebody with your tenure with the organization, your steadfast and long-suffering commitment to this organization, and you and I have weathered all kinds of crises. This is, maybe one of the bigger ones, but you're somebody that I just do not worry about, as you lead our organization in a way that is client-centered, that is thoughtful, and I'm sympathetic to the needs of our employees. You're just so grounded, and anybody that has worked with you or is in your orbit of leadership and influence, I'm sure they know how lucky they are to be near and around somebody that brings your kind of wisdom and sensitivity and kind of positive motivation to everything that you do. And I'm just so grateful to have you on the team and for your continued work out in the programs. Thanks for everything you're doing, and stay safe out there, will you?
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me on the Unity Forum.
Thanks for being here. You're terrific. So we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Sounds good. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Yeah, Mr. Matt Johnson, and we go way back. I could tell many stories. I can still remember going into a poster session when he was in his, doing his grad school, or getting his advanced degree, and it was cold. It was down at the Boston the Trade Center, I think, I forget. I'm babbling now, but yeah, he's a big fan of Matt Johnson. All right, the last person that we're going to talk to, kind of an expert in his own field and getting some sense from him, is Mr. Scott Hagan. He was a board member of NuPath. Scott has been part of the NuPath organization since I met him in 2004. Mr. Scott Hagan, how are you?
Hey, Dan.
I just busy taking credit for everything good that you've done for NuPath. I was going to sort of take the credit because I discovered you. I like to tell people I plucked you from obscurity. You were working for FitTech. It was the place over in Burlington.
Omni Fitness. Yes.
And I wandered in over there, and I was desperate because we had begun to open these autism programs, and part of so important to the whole sort of treatment model was these opportunities for arduous workouts inside, and we were using these crappy systems from Sears, that they were breaking down every 2 seconds, and you sold us the first sort of commercial grade treadmills and recumbent bikes and everything. And I remember you saying, Dan, I've seen damage to these these pieces of equipment that I've never seen in 10 years at commercial gyms, that are used by hundreds of thousands of people over the lifetime of a piece of equipment. And you were just like, looking, I've never seen that housing cover
Smashed. Yeah. Smashed to pieces.
And but see, that was where we were at the moment. We were at a point where we didn't have a lot of money in those days. We still don't, but we were buying the equipment that wasn't lasting. Families were so frustrated. People that weren't getting the exercise, and you helped us kind of, create a whole new kind of, sort of market or cottage industry. I don't know even how you describe it, because I just remember you were patient, you listened, and I was just this, fool, like standing in front of you, like, what are we gonna do? Like, I don't know how to keep these pieces of equipment from falling apart. But that's your introduction to us that long ago, if you can believe it. So that's
Yeah.
16 years, something like that.
16 years. Wow.
And now you're just a year away from 50. Imagine that.
You had to mention that?
So,
yeah.
In our time together, we're so instrumental, as I just said, in getting our that part of our sort of autism model like locked in. You helped us manage our inventory. I think you still do to some degree, managing repairs. You then went to work as your job is job placement, recruitment, talent scout, headhunter, whatever you want to call yourself. And then you've been involved with NuPath doing a lot of our talent sort of acquisition. You've got us some really great. Karen Franklin was through your referral. Lisa LaRock was your referral. I should have mentioned any names, but numerous people that have come to us through your efforts. And then not only that, and this is you have to wait while I say things. You were willing to join our board of directors in 2017, and might I add, this is after you'd already moved to Florida. I remember saying to you, I was on the phone, I was like, we need a new board member, and I wish you hadn't moved to Florida. Like, yeah, but I really care about NuPath, and I'd come up there for the meetings, and you've become one of the highest moneymaker and fundraiser on the board. You've been and raising $7,300 you've raised for NuPath since 2018, and you have been source of just, I don't know how else to say it, but human, just real encourager to me. You're just this positive spirit. You're just like, love NuPath. You really mean it. You watch all of these forums. If you can't make them, you watch them later. I know you do, and that's such a source of encouragement. And finally, I'm going to let you talk. Promise. Your business is Rhino Staffing. This sort of placement business. And I just love to talk to you about what have you dealt with during this pandemic. You live in Florida now, so you're in a different state. But this is crazy, being in a part of your business in a time when the unemployment rate has gone from the lowest in a century to among the highest in recorded history. What's going on with you? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Getting through it. It was tough when this all began back in March. I remember when this first started, we were starting to hear little bits and pieces about COVID and coronavirus. And my first really exposure was we got up, me and my wife, Tiana, got up on a early Sunday. This is when people first started wearing masks and everything was beginning. And we went to a Walmart, put the mask on and walked inside, and nobody was making eye contact, and there was nothing in the stores, and seemed like Armageddon was happening. And I basically had like a small panic attack, and I had to get out of there. And from that point on, we did all the food shopping once a week, and I basically stayed home. It was pretty scary in the beginning, especially when they were giving these projected numbers of the death rate and what they thought was going to happen. So, as with everybody, it's very scary. But like I said, I told you this many times, is the virtual, the forums that you would have a couple times a week really helped. I felt isolated down here, so watching them weekly and seeing the tremendous work that you and your team did, and listening to Dan Lannon and Sharon really helped a lot. Kind of, keeping things positive and keeping me engaged. So.
Well, you said that you felt isolated down there, but I guess the good weather made it so that some of that isolation was, you could deal with it.
Yeah, but we couldn't go outside, so it didn't really matter. And at the time, Massachusetts was
so resentful of you, and you'd call up and you'd be like, "Oh, I see it's going to be 30 degrees below, like 30 degrees, today you've had frozen snow and it's like March already, and you're like, oh, well, it's 80 degrees, I'm out on the beach." Like,
yeah. Well, at least, my whole family's up in Massachusetts, so, I only wish the best for the weather and everything up there, but, it did help that it was sunny out, so at least you could go for a walk, and up in Massachusetts, it was freezing out and you had a tough winter, so it made it even more difficult when this all started.
So when you think about, depending on what data you use, but with the unemployment rate, being in excess of 16% or higher, by some measures, how do you, I know you don't have like a, any, crystal ball, but do you get the feeling just in your dealings and among your connections and networks, are people feeling like this could be a quick one? Do you think that we're going to get back to hiring, once we get a vaccine and once it's going to get back to normal, do you think, quickly?
I would think so. I would hope so. I mean, that's what everybody wants to do, is get back to work. I think Representative Haggerty nailed it when he said the next 3 to 4 weeks are very crucial, kind of, because the clients that I'm calling, they're all saying to me, Scott, let's wait a month, kind of see what happens. And they want to obviously offer the positions back to the people that were laid off, and they have to evaluate, where they are and see, what they have opening. But yeah, I mean,
do you see this as a time when other agencies or other companies, because you do work far outside the realm of human services, so you're working with sort of chemical engineers and like you name it, you're high degreed and pedigreed people, but do you think that that when you think about how long the recession went before, and people go back to 2008 or whatever, the damage that was done, people coming on board, but how much do you think some of the changes are going to be agencies or companies stopping and taking stock and saying, I don't know if we really need these many people anymore, or let's use this as an opportunity to restructure divisions? Do you think you'll see some of that in New World Order?
I'm hearing a lot of that with clients and HR managers that I speak to, that I have relationships with. They're restructuring and figuring out, maybe they were overemployed. They had too many employees that they maybe didn't need, so they're going to try to lean out and see where they are. So a lot of people maybe that are also collecting the 600 extra that they're getting from the unemployment, they're going to try to ride that out and then maybe hopefully go back and get their old job, but their old job may not be there, once companies restructure and see exactly what they need for headcount and positions.
And something you've talked about before, and I know there's been a part of, sort of the evolution of the workforce, and that being how technology is playing a greater and greater role in organizational structures. And you kind of have these major sort of inflection points, and maybe the pandemic being one of them, that's caused so many people who never before even knew of Zoom to suddenly becoming Zoom experts. And you talked about, the staff that are currently working now in this field, really using those skills that they're being forced to learn, maybe like out of necessity, and including that on their resumes. That companies are going to be seeking sort of those digitally proficient sort of employees in this new world order, and like looking at those features being really attractive.
Sure, if a little tip if somebody does have experience working remotely now that they didn't have before. Working with virtual communication platforms like Zoom or Skype, I would definitely get that added to your resume. I think employers in the future are going to be looking for that, people to have that skill in case something like this ever happens again. You know, it makes it an easier transition rather than teaching somebody how to use virtual technology. If they have that experience, especially working remotely, definitely get that on your resume. I mean, I believe anybody, as you're going through your career, as you're learning new skills, you should always update your resume continuously, rather than when you're unemployed and you're trying to remember everything you learned. It's easier if you just add things as you go. Keep it on Word format and just type it in there and save it, just in case you do need it. If you find yourself unemployed, your resume is already up to date. It's a little skill, you know.
Well, Scott Hagan, unfortunately we're up against the end of the hour. You are only the second board member to appear on our Unity forum. So, and that something tells me you're not going to be. It will be a one up for you, that you'll probably be back again.
Sure.
I wish I thought to pull up a picture. That's one of my favorite pictures of you, your wife Taya, your daughter Maya, and Cole. We're at our one of our walks that we had, and I just remember it being a really special walk we had. It was when we were up in Westford that year.
Yeah, at the Puma building.
And you were out full force. You brought some of your colleagues to come and join us. You have been, such a just an earnest and reliable supporter of yours. I see behind you. I see our NuPath logo up there, the Rhino. And you've been a friend, not just to me, but so many of the employees that work for us, and that and it really shaped so many important areas because of the people that you've placed. One's telling me that this is an art, placing people into an organization is an art, not a science. You can look at somebody who's got all the data points of who'd be good, but you're the sort of the artiste that kind of gets like, this is what it's going to take for somebody to be a really exceptional employee, like Elisa LaRock, or Karen Franklin. These people that have really, these treasures that you brought into the organization that have meant so much to. And I'm leaving people out by saying that, but
no, yeah, I mean, I just introduced them to the organization, but obviously they came in and did an amazing job. And I work closely with your HR team, Karen and Lisa Fernandez, who, I work with many HR professionals, and they're two of my favorite, two of the best. And they're great.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you for your time today. I was teasing you last night that I was going to call your kids, or I was going to text them and let them know they should be watching their father today. But I didn't do it because you said no. You're gonna wait until afterwards. You're not the one to fight for the mic or the camera. You're very much a kind of behind the scenes kind of guy, and I appreciate you stepping up and being here today to talk to people and just sharing your insight with us, and thank you for everything you've done and continue.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
If anybody has any family members that need any advice or any, you can always give me a call, and I'm willing to help anybody.
About work, you mean?
About work. Yeah, sure.
Advice, You give good advice. You do give good advice, but I didn't want your phone to be ringing too much off the hook. All right. Well, listen, you stay safe down there in Florida. I'm not so sure that your reopening plan is as good as ours, and I worry about you guys down there because you've got much more of a macho image. Not wanting to wear masks. You may think it's not cool, but we want you to stay healthy and well. And
absolutely.
Because just follow us what we're doing here in Massachusetts. You know your roots, man. We're doing it right up here. So you just watch and learn.
Absolutely. I hope to be up there soon, guys. I'd love to see everybody in person.
Good. Well, we miss you. Love to the family, and thanks again for joining us today, Scott. You're terrific.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Anytime. Bye. Thank you. Bye, guys.
All righty. We have pushed up almost a full hour, and my apologies for going so long. I was really trying to keep these things more like 45 minutes, but we had some important things to talk about today. Hey, we're gonna sign off. I hope you have just a great weekend. I didn't bother you with you know, those inconvenient statistics about the number of people dead and what's going on with the dashboard of the Commonwealth. But ladies and gentlemen, there are states that are in a very different position than Massachusetts right now, and I cannot express more strongly than I am to say that we've got to continue to follow the guidance that we've been receiving. Social distancing, washing your hands, wearing masks, protecting everybody. You know, the statistics are so much more in our favor if we're doing those things. And as we begin to like try to reopen our programs and get people back and get us all to move on to a point where we can begin to make this a distant memory, though probably not till after the vaccine is discovered. We'll do that by managing among the social distancing and all the rest of the guidance. So thanks for being there today. Thanks for caring, for being a part of this amazing organization. And we've got this, guys. We're barreling through it, and we are going to get through it. Thanks to all the families and everyone that's part of the NuPath community that's making this possible. And we will talk again next week. All right. So talk soon. Bye bye.